Hey everybody, today we are looking at the very short book called Obadiah in the Old Testament. This is the shortest Old Testament book. It only consists of 21 verses. And we don't know much about what this book is about. Verse 1 says this guy named Obadiah receives a revelation, a message from the Lord to deliver to the people of Edom. So what's this about? Well, Obadiah, we don't know anything about his life other than his name and that he received this vision, this revelation from God. Obadiah means servant of Yahweh, and whether that's his actual name or just a title that he gives himself, it's a prophetic title. Lots of other prophets sort of call themselves servants of Yahweh. So it could be that Obadiah is his actual name or just a description of himself. Anyway, this guy, whoever he is, receives this special vision, revelation from the Lord. But this prophetic book is different than many others. Most of the prophetic books address primarily the nations of Judah and Israel. We already know and talked about how the one nation of Israel had a civil war and split and became Israel to the north and Judah to the south. And most of the prophetic works are addressing one or the other or both of those nations, and sometimes they have messages to other nations. Obadiah only addresses this one nation, not Judah, not Israel. It only addresses the one nation. What's the nation? It's the nation of Edom, E-D-O-M. So what do we know about these people? Well, Edom is the nation that is Israel's next door neighbor, kind of to the east. And what do we know about Edom? Well, Edom was founded apparently by Jacob's brother Esau. You may remember all the way back in Genesis how Isaac gave birth, his wife Rebekah gave birth to twins, Jacob and Esau, and that they were fighting even in the womb, that Esau comes out first, Jacob is holding his heel, and this is kind of indicative of this relationship that they're going to have throughout their adult life. They're kind of fighting each other. Jacob cheats and steals Esau out of his birthright of being the firstborn, and he's the one that kind of inherits God's blessing. And Esau is really upset by this. He kind of tries to attack Jacob on a number of occasions. Eventually they kind of reconcile and then go their separate ways and become kind of the fathers of their own nation. So Jacob, his name is changed to Israel, and he becomes the father of the people of Israel. And Esau goes a different direction, and he founds the nation of Edom. And throughout throughout history, these two people, share the same blood from the same lineage. They live right next door to each other, but throughout their whole history, they were combative of one another. And so Obadiah is addressing Israel's next door neighbor, Edom, who they've had this hostile relationship with for centuries. And what is he calling them out on? Well, if you read the short 21 verses, you'll see that it's clear that the exile has already happened. So Israel has been defeated by the Assyrians and taken into exile, and then the Babylonians conquer the Assyrians. Judah in the south is still left, but in 586 BC, the Babylonians come in and they conquer Judah to the south and take them away to exile. And so through the book of Obadiah, it's really clear that the exile has either just recently happened or is still kind of in distant memory. And Edom, their neighbor, their kind of cousins, stood by the side and did nothing. They allowed Babylon to come in and destroy them instead of helping kind of their family, so to speak. They not only did nothing, but they ridiculed them, they took advantage of them, they harmed them, they took over their lands as well. And so the whole message of Obadiah is pointing out how when you see a nation, particularly full of God's people, in need, that you ought to take positive action, not negative action. You shouldn't be oppressing, laughing at, mocking, any people who are in trouble, particularly if they are God's people. And so the whole of Obadiah's message is kind of three short prophetic judgments on the nation of Edom for standing by, taking advantage of, and mocking God's people as they go into exile. And we see this common thread throughout the prophets, that for the foreign nations that have oppressed God's people or stood by or mocked God's people, they're going to be on the receiving end of God's divine justice as well. And so that's essentially what this book is about. And the interesting thing is we know that this prophecy happens. So 35 years later, after Judah goes into exile, another king, Nabonidus of the Babylonians, comes in and he conquers and destroys the Edomites, carries them away to exile. A few people kind of remain. Eventually the land gets changed, the name gets changed to Idumea, which is kind of similar. And they kind of continue to rebel against God's people and are in conflict against God's people. But eventually, another people group, the Nabatean Arabs, move in, and they kind of kick them out, displace them, intermingle with them, and they kind of exist for a while until ultimately the Romans come in and completely ransack and destroy the place. And there's no trace left of them anymore. And so here we have this indication of God's word doing what it said it would. That when we see these prophecies, God acts. They come true. And this is what happens. That in Obadiah it says, because of your constant conflict with me and my people, you're not going to be around anymore. And this is exactly what happens. There are no Edomites around today. And so this for us is, again, a message of warning and a message of hope. It's a message of warning to those who oppress God's people, who oppress those who are in need, and take advantage of those who are under duress. That if that's your behavior toward them, especially if you're a more prosperous nation and you see another nation in trouble and you do nothing but take advantage of them, well, there's a warning here for you. But it's a message of hope as well, because if you're one of God's people and you've experienced exile and destruction, you have hope that God isn't just standing by and saying, well, that's too bad, but God's a God who takes action. And he restores his people, even though they are the ones that have turned against him. And so there's this message of God's grace and continuing hope, that God is victorious, and one day he's going to make all things right again, and we can cling onto that promise and that hope. So I'll leave you with that today, and we'll leave Obadiah behind this week and jump into a new prophetic book next week. So we'll see you then. Bye.